The engine didn't cough. It died with a sigh, a final, soft exhalation that was swallowed by the vast, oppressive silence of the Montana prairie. Alara Vance slammed her perfectly manicured hand against the leather-wrapped steering wheel of her ludicrously expensive convertible. The gesture was useless, a city-born frustration met with rural indifference. The sky, a bruised tapestry of purple and gray, promised a storm, and the wind, smelling of damp earth and coming snow, whipped her silk blouse against her skin. She was a splash of vibrant, misplaced color in a world of muted browns and greening early spring grass. Miles away, from the crest of a rolling hill, Liam saw it all. He saw the car, a low-slung, alien thing glinting in the intermittent sun, and he saw the figure get out, a flash of crimson against the gray. He was on his old tractor, the seat worn smooth by generations of his family, trying to mend a fence post before the weather broke. His land, the 200 acres that had been in his family for over a century, stretched out around him, not as a possession but as a weight. A beautiful, back-breaking weight. He wiped sweat and grime from his forehead with a frayed sleeve and made a decision. Leaving the tractor grumbling, he climbed into his beat-up Ford pickup and rumbled down the dirt access road toward the stranded motorist. When he pulled up behind her car, the contrast was almost comical. His truck was caked in the mud of a struggling spring, hers was a sculpture of polished metal and curves. She turned as he approached, and for a moment, the wind was knocked out of him. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, she was polished, a creature from a different universe. Her eyes, the color of moss agate, were wide with a mixture of annoyance and a flicker of fear she was trying hard to suppress. "Do you have a phone?" she asked, her voice crisp, carrying an accent of boardrooms and private clubs. "There's no signal out here. Nothing. Dead zone for about 10 miles in every direction," Liam said, his voice rougher than he intended. He gestured to the car. "Pop the hood. Let's have a look before the sky opens up." She looked skeptical, her eyes traveling over his worn jeans, his scuffed work boots, the honest fatigue in his face. But necessity overruled prejudice. She found the latch and the hood sprang open. Liam peered inside. The engine bay was pristine, a complex maze of parts he didn't recognize. It wasn't a machine meant to be understood by a man with calloused hands and a toolbox full of wrenches. But the problem was basic enough. A loose battery cable, corroded from the dust and vibration of the gravel road. "It's simple," he said, pulling a wrench from his pocket. "The connections just jiggled loose. Give me a minute." As he worked, tightening the terminal, the first fat, cold drops of rain began to fall. Alara huddled in the driver's seat, watching him. There was a quiet competence in his movements, a surety that was absent from the men she knew, whose confidence was built on portfolios and stock options. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now, as the rain pattered on the canvas roof. "I'm Alara. I was just driving." "Liam," he replied, not looking up. "Not many folks just drive down these roads. They're mostly for getting from one patch of dirt to another." He slammed the hood shut. "Try it now." She turned the key. The engine roared to life, the sound shockingly loud in the quiet landscape. The relief on her face was palpable. But as she looked at the darkening sky and the muddy track ahead, her confidence faltered. "The forecast said this would get worse," Liam said, following her gaze. "That road turns to soup in a downpour. You'll get stuck for real, a half-mile from pavement." He hesitated, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. "You can wait it out at my place. It's just over the hill. It's dry." The invitation hung between them, absurd and yet somehow inevitable. Alara, the queen of a corporate empire, and Liam, the king of a failing farm. She looked at his earnest, rain-streaked face and saw no threat, only a stark, weathered honesty. "Okay," she said, surprising herself. "Just until it lets up." His house was exactly what she expected and yet it still stole her breath. It was old, the wood siding silvered with age, the porch sagging in the middle. But it was surrounded by a fierce, wild beauty. Inside, it was warm, smelling of wood smoke and coffee. It was Spartan, clean, but worn at the edges. Photographs of stern-faced men and women who shared Liam's jawline lined the mantelpiece. He made coffee, strong and black, and they sat at his kitchen table, the storm raging outside. The initial awkwardness melted away, replaced by a strange, intimate curiosity. "What's it like?" she asked, nodding towards the window. "Living out here, so isolated." Liam gave a small, tired smile. It's a conversation. Every day, you're talking to the land. Asking for enough rain, but not too much. Praying for sun, for a good price at market. It talks back, too. In the sound of the wheat, the look of the sky. He looked down at his hands. Lately, it's been shouting. A drought last year, feed prices through the roof, it's a hard conversation to have alone. His vulnerability disarmed her. The men in her life never admitted to struggling, they pivoted, they restructured, they laid off. I run my father's company, she offered, a piece of her own truth. Vance consolidated. It's a different kind of conversation. Mostly people telling you what you want to hear. Vance. Liam's eyes flickered with a hint of recognition, but it didn't stick. Corporate giants were a world away. Must be stressful. It is. But out here, it feels real. This, she said, gesturing around the humble kitchen, feels more real than my penthouse. The hours slipped by. The rain softened to a drizzle, then stopped. A brilliant, low sun broke through the clouds, setting the wet fields ablaze in gold. It was time for her to go. As she stood by her car, the air clean and cold, something passed between them, a connection that defied logic. Thank you, Liam. For the car. For the coffee. For the sanctuary. She hesitated, then scribbled a number on a scrap of paper from her glove box. If you're ever in the city. He took it, his rough fingers brushing against hers, a spark in the cool air. Drive safe, Alara. He watched her taillights disappear, the piece of paper feeling like a live wire in his hand. For the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. He felt a flicker of something he'd thought long dead, hope. The hope lasted for 7 days. It was a fragile, giddy thing. He found himself smiling at nothing, the memory of her laugh, the intelligent gleam in her eyes, playing on a loop in his mind. He'd almost called the number a dozen times, his thumb hovering over the digits on his ancient flip phone. On the 8th day, the hope was incinerated. It began with a crisp, official-looking letter from a corporate law firm, Vance, Thorne & Associates. His heart hammered against his ribs. Was this her? Some strange, formal way of reaching out. But as he read the words, the world tilted on its axis. Regret to inform you, outstanding liens, acquisition of the property known as the Dawson Homestead, failure to meet financial obligations, foreclosure proceedings. The farm. They were taking the farm. The words blurred, but one name burned itself into his brain, the letterhead searing his retinas, Vance Consolidated Holdings. Vance. Alara Vance. The coincidence was too monstrous, too perfectly cruel to be real. The daughter of the corporate titan whose company was systematically buying up all the debt-ridden land in the valley, packaging it for some vast, soulless development. She hadn't been lost. She had been scouting. He saw it all with a horrifying, crystalline clarity. Her stranded car, her questions about the land, the isolation, his own stupid, trusting confession about his financial troubles. She had played him perfectly. A cold fury, colder than the Montana winter, settled in his bones. It was a rage born of betrayal, of the utter demolition of that fragile, beautiful hope. He didn't call the number. He got in his truck and drove, the letter crumpled in his fist. He drove to the city, a place of glass and steel that felt like an alien planet. He marched into the gleaming lobby of the Vance Consolidated Tower, his work boots leaving traces of his world on the polished marble floor. The receptionist tried to stop him, but the look in his eyes was a force of nature. He shoved open the double doors to a corner office, a glass-walled realm with a view of the entire city. And there she was. Alara stood before a massive digital map, dotted with pins. She was wearing a severe, exquisitely cut black suit, a headset on one ear. She was speaking, her voice the one he remembered, but the tone was entirely new, sharp, analytical, ruthless. The Dawson parcel is the final key. Once we secure it, the entire watershed is ours. The offer is final. He has no other options. She turned, and saw him. The color drained from her face. Liam, what are you? He didn't let her finish. He strode forward and slammed the crumpled letter onto her glass desk. The sound echoed in the silent, sterile room. Was it a game? His voice was a low, dangerous rasp. Get the dumb farmer to trust you. To spill his guts about how desperate he was. Did you get a good laugh about it over champagne in your penthouse? Her eyes, those beautiful moss agate eyes, widened in genuine shock. Liam, no. It's not what you think. Don't. He roared, the sound raw and animalistic. Don't you dare lie to me. Your name is on the letter. Your company is destroying my life, my family's legacy. You sat in my kitchen, you drank my coffee, and you were just casing the joint. I told you everything. I trusted you. The pain on his face was a physical thing. It wasn't just the loss of the land, it was the annihilation of the connection he'd felt, the first real light he'd seen in years. She had taken his hope and used it as a weapon. Liam, please, she pleaded, her corporate facade shattering. Let me explain. The acquisition division, it's a separate part of the company. I didn't know it was your farm. I didn't make the connection until just now, when I saw the name on the map. I swear to you, you're the daughter of the owner. He shot back, his voice cracking. You have the power to stop this. You could have stopped it the second you left my land, if you'd cared at all. Tears were streaming down her face now, smudging her impeccable makeup. You don't understand. My father, the company, it's not that simple. It is, he yelled, leaning over the desk, his face inches from hers. It's very simple. You are your father's daughter. And you are destroying me. He turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, small and broken in her palace of glass. The ride home was a blur of white-hot pain and black despair. Days turned into a week. The eviction notice came. He was packing his life into cardboard boxes, the ghosts of his ancestors watching him in silent judgment, when he heard a car door slam. He didn't need to look. He knew it was her. He walked out onto the porch, his body numb. She stood by a rented sedan, looking frail and out of place again, but this time it was different. She looked stripped bare of all her power. I'm not here to apologize, she said, her voice quiet but steady. An apology would be an insult. Then why are you here? He asked, his voice flat, dead. To tell you the truth. She took a shaky breath, gathering her courage. The day I broke down on your road, I wasn't scouting. I was running. My father, Robert Vance, had just told me he was terminally ill. And he told me something else. The reason he was so desperate to acquire this specific valley. Liam said nothing, his stony silence a wall. He told me that before he built his empire, before he was anyone, he was a young man who had an affair with a woman who lived in this valley. A woman named Eleanor Dawson. The name hit Liam like a physical blow. Eleanor Dawson, his grandmother. Alara looked at him, her eyes filled with a profound, heartbreaking sorrow. My father is dying, Liam. And he told me I have a brother. A half-brother. He said the boy was given up for adoption by Eleanor's family, to avoid the scandal. He said he'd spent years trying to find him, to make things right, but it was too late. The trail was cold. The world seemed to stop spinning. The birds fell silent. The very air stood still. Alara took a step forward, her composure finally breaking, her voice a shattered whisper. He bought all this land, Liam, not for a development, but because it was the only connection he had left to his firstborn son. His heir. He was trying to preserve it, in his own twisted way. And when he dies, it all comes to me. All of it, including the legal right to foreclose on this land, which the company has held for years. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering in the cold she was no longer dressed for. I came out here that day because I was lost. I was trying to understand the place my father couldn't forget. The place where my brother, might have grown up. Her words hung in the air, the final, devastating twist of the knife. Liam stared at her, the pieces of his reality fracturing and reassembling into a horrifying new picture. The enemy wasn't just the woman he'd foolishly begun to love. The land wasn't just being stolen by a corporation. The farm he was about to lose, was his birthright. And the woman who held the power to take it all away, was his sister.